Mediaite also was reporting on a leaked Nikki Haley memo that went after Trump for being indicted, which is an interesting development. This is a memo to donors from Nikki Haley. Donald Trump had a pretty good Q1 if you count being indicted as good. Mediaite continues, her campaign also claimed Trump only promised more drama, quote, more drama in the future as his legal woes continue to mount. The other candidate to get mentioned, Mediaite says, is DeSantis. It accuses him of making numerous, quote, missteps since unofficially launching his 2024 campaign with a book tour. Here's the quote. Ron DeSantis essentially launched his presidential campaign with a national book tour during this period and made one misstep after another, confirming what many observers have long suspected. He's not ready for prime time. And it continues to say, and then there are the others. Wait, what others? Just really clever stuff from whoever wrote the donor memo.
How is Nikki Haley being received on the right? Is she
not
considered?
Well.
No, it's just nothing. Do people think she's running for something else? For a future, like to just raise her profile? Like what's the kind of right kind of conventional wisdom about what the Nikki Haley campaign is?
Yeah, I think it's that she's not being well received by the conservative movement, but Republican voters are a totally different question than that. You know, your average Republican primary voter is not what is called a movement conservative on the right. That's just not the case. So sort of institutional conservatives, movement conservatives look at Nikki Haley, grassroots, and say she's totally behind the curve. Like she's running a campaign from 2012. I would argue that's close to the truth, in 2022. And at the same time, Nikki Haley's going to say, well, I can connect with suburban women. I can connect with, you know, your
soccer moms.
Yeah, it's a totally different demographic than your sort of grassroots Republican activist or your movement conservative who is pretty averse to the Nikki Haley campaign.
Not Jeb.
Yeah, and they're tied up, obviously, in the Trump-DeSantis feud. The conservative movement is very tied up in the Trump-DeSantis feud. Speaking of which, we have polling. This is a new Morning Consult poll. This was published on Tuesday of 3,600 potential Republican primary voters. Almost 60%, according to Mediaite, again, said they preferred Trump to DeSantis in a 2024 matchup. 60%. Trump tops the poll with 56% support in the survey. DeSantis is behind him with 23%. That is a 33-point margin. Nikki Haley, Mike Pence and Nikki Haley are following Trump and DeSantis at 7% and 4%. Liz Cheney's in there with 3%, and every other option is at 1% or less. Salon is reporting that support for former President Donald Trump fell rapidly after
B5
he was
up here.
Yeah,
that was the good news. Here's the bad news.
Here's another poll. 34 felony counts, obviously, from last week. His support in an ABC News Ipsos poll dipped pretty heavily after that. Salon is pointing out that Trump says he thinks the indictment could help him by boosting his support in the election. The poll found that a majority of Americans, 53%, believe he did something illegal. 11% say he acted wrongly but not intentionally. 20% believe he was not culpable at all. CNN poll released last week showed that 62% of independent voters approved of the indictment. That ABC News poll from this week found 50% of people believe that Trump should be charged with a crime. 33% think he should not. Nearly half of respondents said Trump should suspend his campaign in the wake of the indictment. That was up from 43% before the indictment. So as you said, Ryan, a little good news, a little bad news, but this is a perfect contrast between primary and general election. The poll of Republican primary voters has him up at nearly 60%, with 33 points over DeSantis, who's at 23 points. Whereas when you're looking towards the general election, you have that broader pool, not just of Republican primary voters, saying, this might actually change my mind.
What's amazing is that you have Biden's approval rating in here at 34%, and you have him up almost 10 higher than Trump, whose approval rating is sitting at 25%. Now, as Ron Klain famously tweeted after Macron won with like a 30% approval rating, he was like, he did the eyeball emojis. Look at that. Turns out you can win an election with 30% approval rating. Somebody has to win. Like that is the actual way that we do elections. So it's at this point, it looks like it's either going to be somebody with a 25% approval rating or somebody with a 34% approval rating, unless entering the chat is Tim Scott, South Carolina senator. I've put up B6 here, who just formed an exploratory presidential committee. He's been kind of flirting with a presidential run for years now.
Yeah.
And kind of, but so I'm curious again, on the right, what's the conventional wisdom about Tim Scott?
I think it's the exact same as Nikki Haley, except he panders less, at least overtly, to that sort of soccer mom crowd. There was a lot of cringing over Nikki Haley's response to Don Lemon, where he made that horrible gaffe saying that she was past her prime. It was just bizarre. It wasn't
Don
a
Lemon
gaffe
said
either.
he was past her prime?
He said Nikki Haley was past her prime. Oh my gosh, if you missed this, you got to go back and watch the clip because it's absolutely hilarious. But it wasn't a gaffe either. It was just Don Lemon being Don Lemon. And Nikki Haley just responded to it in, I think, a pretty cringy way. And Tim Scott, has had less opportunity to do that as of now. I think he's probably ideologically similar. Obviously, they're both South Carolina Republicans. People that would have really excited, I think, the Tea Party wing of the party back in 2012, 2016, but have adapted to the Trump era by not really adapting, have adapted to the Trump era, maybe by changing the way they talk about the media, maybe by changing the way they talk about rural America and forgotten Americans. But policy-wise, really hasn't been a ton of shift from then to now. They say that's good, right? That's the thing that allows them to connect and communicate with suburban voters, your typical Republican voters, people that Democrats pander to when it comes to, certain, like the Gottheimer wing of the Democratic Party. Right?
Is that a whole wing? Do we have to call that a wing?
It's not a whole wing, actually. But
it's a well-funded wing. We'll definitely give it that.
Well-funded.
Yeah.
The Gottheimer Democrats could be Nikki Haley Republicans, right? Like that's, or Tim Scott Republicans.
Well, yeah, the Problem Solvers Caucus, the No Labels crew, like that's their. Yeah, that is. I mean, and we might see it in 2024. With No Labels spending $70 million to get ballot lines everywhere.
Salt deduction voters, yeah.
Could it be Manchin Haley?
Yeah. Well, and again, there is it depends on the economic climate. It depends on the cultural climate. People have good reasons for being interested in different things, depending on where they're coming from, depending on what their interests are. And yeah, they're betting that you can make the pitch. But when you have Donald Trump up right now, things change. But when you have him up over DeSantis on that level, it just looks like 2016 again, where it's Donald Trump and everyone else, and the vote against Donald Trump. This time, maybe it's only 40%. I doubt it stays exactly 60-40. But you're either voting for Trump or you're voting against Trump, just with a different flavor of voting against Trump, and that makes it's a glide path for the nomination to him.
And y'all couldn't beat Trump in 2016 when you had 60 to 65% of the party against him in primaries.
They sure.
Now you have like 40% against him. So.
And he's dominating the media because one of the biggest news stories in the world is this indictment of a former president. So he's going to eat up all the airtime as will be looming over. There's three other cases actually. There's the documents case, the Georgia case, and there's one that I'm forgetting. But the one that he was indicted on last week, I don't even think is going to court until December. No. So good luck.
There you go.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Sagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.